Welcome everyone to this week's Nym community call. This is a very exciting one. This is going to be about cypherpunks, mixnets, and shielded money. So hopefully anybody who's been following Nym for any length of time understands why those topics are very much right in our court. And for that, of course, I have with me two guests. Both of them very special, but one of them you already know, of course, Harry Halpin, Nym CEO. How is it going, Harry? I think you're muted.
I prematurely muted. Yes. Yeah, it's going great. I mean, I just wanted people to be aware of all, I don't know if everyone is of all the cool things going on in Zcash and how Nym is helping Zcash. And also, I think some of the more interesting, deeper kind of philosophical and historical connections between private digital money and private digital communication. So
And also, of course, the second guest, who you may not know, but who's also just equally exciting, who's Daira. Now, I was looking for a quick and succinct way to introduce you and list your credentials, but it's very hard to do so because you have such a decorated list. So I will just allow you to do that. How's it going?
Okay. I got into crypto because I thought it was a bad idea for governments to be able to surveil everyone. And let's see, I did some work on cryptography libraries back when the export restrictions were in place, and so it was useful to develop crypto outside the US. Of course, it still is. And did some work on Tahoe LAFS, which is a distributed storage system using erasure coding and encryption and signatures. Let's see, there was a company called Least Authority that was supposed to be commercializing Tahoe LAFS, but we couldn't really compete with big storage providers like Google and so on. So that pivoted into security consulting, and then the Zero Cash paper was published, and I think a year or so later, we started work on Zcash, and there's lots of other stuff that I'm missing out, but yeah, since then I've been working on Zcash since 2015.
Well, I'd like to mention one thing you left out, which is how I first ran to your work, Daira, where many years ago, so this is, I don't know, like 2004 or something, we were running a kind of volunteer-based internet server, and people wanted to send email anonymously, and there were not many ways to do it back then. And so there was this work called Mixmaster that was developed by Lynn Sassaman and Lance Cottrell and others. Lynn has been, I would say, likely misidentified as Satoshi. You never know, anything's possible. But and I remember discussing Bitcoin when it launched with Lynn, and Lynn was like, "Oh, it's not private. Oh, it's not used. Why isn't it private? How do they not? We shouldn't use it because it's not private," which makes me think Lynn is probably not Satoshi. But then when I was like, well, I'm not really, I'm more interested in mixnets because I think I ran to the concept probably around 10 to, I mean, I knew about Mixmaster, but we didn't realize until how bad the surveillance was going to get. I said, well, if we really, and I kind of said one of the problems that early mixnets had is that there was no way to reply anonymously. So there was kind of a one-way tunnel. You could send people anonymous messages and they were unlinkable to you, which is kind of great for certain whistleblowing, also great for spam, I might add, certain use cases. They were emailing from send messages anonymously on the return path.
I'm not sure I even have the copies of those emails because I think that was an old account. So
oh no, okay. I mean, if I can track it down, they're probably, yeah. But I think those concepts all eventually work their way into mixed minion and single-use reply blocks, which is literally the same technology that the Nym mixnet uses today. So if you send someone a Nym message, to each message we attach these anonymous kind of encrypted drop boxes. This sort of work. And then there's empirical work that was done pretty recently by Claudia Diaz and Anya Petruska, sort of saying, well, it's a bit like declining returns. Like you make your path really, really long, does it really, really help? But it ends up 3 is kind of the right number. Like you do get some returns up to 5, but you really get you kind of max your returns out, at least for most use cases at 3. So what we do with Nym is we have 3 hops as like a standard length with the client, and then those number of hops. But what we discovered, because Nym is not really just for email. You send an email, you get one email back. It's kind of like a back and forth, like a chat. But people do all sorts of crazy things with Nym, many of which involve multiple big things getting pushed around different packets. So what we do is we attach multiple serbs to each packet. So you get your packet, and you get kind of a collection of drop boxes, and that speeds things up a bit. And I'd actually love your review of that design. I know you got a lot on your plate, so I'm going to ask you to do it now. But I do think later in the year, we're going to move a lot of our focus to really perfecting the mixnet. A lot of our focus has been on getting the VPN faster and more reliable and good user experience. I hope it's been usable. And then, of course, integrating with things like Zcash, which I hope you can talk about Zcash's privacy properties. But we will return to your emails, I think, from like the 90s or early 2000s, where you really outlined how to make mixnets better. And everyone still is building off that work. I know sometimes you think, do something, and it keeps growing when you move on to other things. So
I think I remember talking about sending multiple subs. Yeah.
I know I actually have that email somewhere. I'm sure I can find it. I think if you give me
I'd be really interested in seeing that.
Daira,
it's very detailed. You go through all the math as well. That's quite nice.
No, I did that for the other Sphinx, the thing that became SLHDSA, the post-quantum hash-based signature scheme.
The Sphinx with a C.
Sphinx with a C. Well, Sphinx Plus became the standardized thing. Yeah. Who are you if you haven't been confused for Satoshi, really, in the cypherpunk world? There was some kind of strange idea that I was Satoshi. I'm not. I would not write a network-facing financial cryptography system in C++.
Who is Satoshi then? Can you drop this on us?
No, I actually think that we shouldn't speculate. I think they clearly want us to be anonymous. We should respect that. And if we have out-of-band information, then we should not contribute to an intersection attack. So
I agree with that, and I feel like a big part of the movement and what grew out of his work is actually partly because they are anonymous, right, or pseudonymous. So we should definitely stick together to keep it that way.
But I would like to add one point, which is this is not. So when everyone's like talking about who's Satoshi, and they usually do some like weird social network analysis, like no one really looks at the code, but you can look at the code, or they look at the white paper or whatever. I would say that's the one thing people forget about Satoshi. I'm not sure how Satoshi was obviously a cypherpunk to a large extent, like actually knew that tech stack pretty well and was very creative. So no matter who it is or how things came to be,
you can tell that.
She or he, you can tell. And that one thing they knew about, and actually hilariously, it was Adam Back that mentioned this to me on another call. Adam said, well, proof of work was not really meant for digital currency. So the only people that really knew about it were people that were working on like things like Mixmaster. Therefore, this bizarre theory that you're suggesting. Or Len. And they're like, well, so they said, well, the person had to know about 2 things. They had to know about anonymous networks, either PipeNet or Mixmaster or something in this space, because they knew about anonymous proof of work schemes. Not just they might not have read the academic papers. They at least knew about the problem. And then they were very concerned about keeping. They weren't really concerned about permissionless digital money, more so than they were concerned about keeping the miners anonymous and so that you didn't have to like ID yourself to join the consensus pool. I think that's something which Adam pointed out to me, who also has denied being Satoshi, I'm pretty sure he's not as well. But Adam said, they did know about mixnets, they did know about digital cash. But he's also like, but then Adam's like, one thing they probably didn't know about, or at least they didn't seem to know about, is zero knowledge proofs. So,
well, I didn't know about zero knowledge proofs then, so
yeah, I'll tell you a little.
I think I knew about the GMR paper, but I knew that they existed.
You'd hear rumors about them, but they seem sort of useless, at least the early work, like very theoretical, like expensive in terms of computation. Like I think the Macaulay, I forget, they weren't using until Groth 16 came about. But the other funny
until PHGR 13.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's true. That's the correct one. But then the thing that really blew my mind, and this is how I got introduced to Zcash, is I was at MIT, and I had this guy across the office from me called Madars Versa, and he's just and I knew him because we would stay up all night coding and hanging out, and I'd be up at like 3 a.m. and he'd be up at 3 a.m. and honestly at 3 a.m. there's very few other people up, and we're in the same office, and then, he's like, oh, I'm working this thing called libsnark, and I've managed to make zero knowledge usable with C. I was like, oh, that's wild. And I think the Zcash built on that.
Zcash used libsnark. Libsnark was actually the only thing left of the academic zero cash prototype when we launched. So we wrote everything else.
Well, why don't we learn? Let's tell people about how Zcash launched and all of the stuff that I think most people maybe are not familiar. I'd love to know more. I only know Madar, so everything I got is kind of biased by his take on things. But he was just very excited to see, and Jens Groth, who I knew, was very excited to see this stuff actually hit production, a real use case.
Yeah. So basically, from my point of view, we were dumped this code base, which was the academic prototype and libsnark and Bitcoin Core 0.10.0 we started with, and had to figure out how it all worked with zero experience of ZK proofs or succinct proof systems or blockchains. That tells you I'm not Satoshi. And yeah, it was quite difficult. There was a summit where we went to Boulder, to Zuko's house, and we tried to figure some of this stuff out and figure out what features we needed for launch, and kind of whether any changes were needed to the protocol. Did actually find some bugs in the protocol that we fixed before launch. And yeah, it was a great group of people. We were very lucky in who Zuko picked for kind of the initial developers, because I can't think of a better team of people to have started something like this, and I'm not sure we'd have succeeded at all with them. And that's Sean Bowe and Jack Grigg. There were other people who came along later and made big contributions. There was Simon Liu, Chris Nottingham, and read the acknowledgements in the Zcash protocol spec if you want the full list. But I love working with these people. They're amazing.
And I'll just add one thing. I used to work on web standards, including some specs, like the web crypto spec and other specs, and the IETF as well. And the Zcash protocol spec is, I think, widely known as one of the best specs out there and the most complete, particularly given the advanced level cryptography. I think everyone was usually specs leave a lot to the imagination, and or maybe not. And the Zcash spec was incredibly high quality. I do remember even standards bodies noting that when it came out.
The reason it does that is that I'd mocked up a lot of crypto papers and taken note of how protocols failed, and they fail because of kind of gaps between the abstract cryptography and the deployed instantiation. They fail because of encoding issues, which we've had a ton of. And so, yeah, they fail because of differences between the elliptic curves using and a prime order group. So all of these things that had been traditionally left out of papers were how protocols were actually getting broken. And so I wanted to write the spec in a way that you could at least potentially see the problems, even if you couldn't solve all of them. Yeah, and in the kind of AI apocalypse recently, where basically every protocol has been attacked repeatedly by AI-assisted bug hunting. Yeah, a lot of those bugs that we found were encoding bugs. So even with a pretty good spec, it's still basically written in an informal math-like language that isn't type checked. You have to type check it in your head, and so there can still be a bunch of mistakes. And again, that's what we're trying to fix with the formalization.
So maybe, I mean, yeah, like I would say, like what people often don't know, like Nym has some proofs in our papers as well, particularly for core components like the post-quantum version of Sphinx, for the ZK-Nym digital cache scheme. But these proofs, which for better or for worse, we tend to write in UC, which is a particular way of writing proofs that makes them even
universal composability
further read than normal, are not translatable to code by themselves. And so the question is, does the proof really give you the security or the privacy that you want? And I think it's good to do that. Whenever you do the proof, my old theory was basically an excuse to stare at the code and stare at the concept for a long time. And if you can stare at something long enough and you know what you're doing, you will discover bugs while staring at it. But then what we found in practice is that even like with academic paper, you submit the paper, very few people actually read the proofs. The proofs have bugs. And then the proofs are, most importantly, as you point out, done at a level of abstraction that misses the real bugs, right? And so that I think that's the real issue.
That's an interesting point. So my take on this is that anything you can formalize helps because it cuts down the attack surface. So if you formalize just the abstract protocol and that and you don't find any bugs and you're able to prove what you want to prove, then kind of that's cut out bugs in that layer. And there are lots of caveats, but and you can always extend a formalization of the abstract protocol and make it more concrete. I've started doing this in Compolyptic, which is one of the libraries that the Ironwood formalization depends on. And I intend to kind of drill down to the encodings of elliptic curve points and the and field elements and kind of instantiate the real hash functions with the real personalization strings and make the formalization as detailed as the spec. And I think there's possibly another kind of layer of bugs that will either find or eliminate. Yeah.
Since we talked about the whole AI apocalypse and security researchers, all of the new security researchers spawning from left and right, using the AI models, to try poking holes into various things. Would you mind walking us through Ironwood and how the whole thing went down, and why it ended up getting why Zcash ended up getting this update?
So we should start near at the beginning. Actually, let's start right at the beginning before launch, because I mentioned there were some bugs in the zero cash paper. So, for example, there was a commitment scheme that wasn't binding, and there was a 2 to the 64 cost attack on it, and that would have been a balance violation. And so we fixed a couple of those things before launch. Then there was the BCTV 14 bug. So BCTV 14 is the proof system that we started with. This was before we switched to Grok 16. And there was a bug in the setup procedure in that paper. It had been based on the scheme that I talked about before, PHGR 13, and adapted to a different kind of pairing-based curve, and that adaptation was done incorrectly in a way that there was information that shouldn't have been leaked in the setup procedure. So that was a soundness problem, and that affected Sprout, which is the first pool that we deployed. We launched Sapling with Grok 16, but at that time, it was much less likely that people would independently find a proof system flaw like this. There was another consideration, which is that the transcript wasn't widely available. So the people who were making this decision about how to handle the bug judged that it was unlikely to be exploited until we would have time to deploy Sapling with the fix. So we did that. Sapling had a lot of other improvements, sort of huge performance improvements. But it still had a trusted setup. And kind of it's very difficult to dispel FUD about whether the setup was done correctly, whether things could have leaked from the computers that were used in the setup, and so on. So we decided to deploy a new protocol called Orchard, which is kind of a streamlined version of Sapling in some ways, with a transparent proof system. And the circuits that you write for these things are kind of complicated, and you have to, one way of implementing them, which is the way that we chose, is you have an API that you write ordinary Rust code, and that generates the circuit description. And we missed out a couple of things. We missed out a couple of constraints, just tying some of the internal variables to the input to the circuit. And that turned out to allow a soundness flaw. And so going back to the AI angle, in about end of March, beginning of April, I think it's roughly when Opus 4.7 came out, or Opus 4.6, I'm not sure. We got this kind of influx of bug reports. Initially they were very high quality bug reports, and some of the later ones were kind of overstated. But these initial bug reports, we were kind of scrambling to fix it and learning how to use AI to fix bugs quickly. So we did that for a few weeks, and kind of went through a whole bunch of different Zcash D releases and Zebra releases. Those are the two main node implementations. And yeah, there was a little bit of a lull. there was also a bug bounty program, which itself, because people were incentivized to report bugs by having bounties, we got a bunch of kind of duplicate reports or low quality reports that we had to wade through. So that was taking up our time. And then we got the soundless flaw in the Orchard circuit, which was found by Taylor Hornby, the same person who had found the commitment binding bug before launch. So yeah, he's a great researcher, very, very competent. And so we had to scramble to fix this, but we couldn't afford to kind of leave it as long as we had for sapling, because this was the kind of bug that if you kind of pointed an AI at it and knew where to point it, other people could potentially have found it. So yeah, and this has been found, I think, shortly after Opus 4.7 came out. But Taylor had found it using this kind of quite sophisticated kind of bug hunting harness that other people probably wouldn't have had access to. In any case, we had to fix this really quickly, and the only way we could fix it without revealing too much information to adversaries, kind of allowing them to exploit a bug before everyone had upgraded their nodes, was to do it in 2 stages. So a soft fork to switch off Orchard, and so soft forks tend to be safer to do at short notice in blockchains, because kind of so every node will kind of merge back to the same chain, because if they're enforcing a weaker set of consensus rules, and that still doesn't stop them following the chain of the nodes that are enforcing the stronger set. So you can switch off features, and that's just a soft fork. So we did that for Orchard, but then we had to switch it back on again as soon as possible. So we managed to do it within, I think it was 36 hours, something like that. The original target had been 24 hours. But I had to basically work overnight trying to get this finished. Yeah. It's not ideal to be writing security fixes on quite little sleep. But we had too few people available to fix it. They did get a lot of review. But let's see. It had extremely thorough tests. If you go and look at the PR that fixes that consensus bug, I don't know if we can link it later so people can see it. But it had a ton of tests written by Claude. It's extremely thorough. It's probably one of the most thoroughly tested PRs I've ever written. Yeah, it worked. We had some difficulty getting mining pools to upgrade in time. And obviously, because we had to do it so fast that our users' wallets hadn't upgraded, so some disruption, but overall it worked.
Now, look, I was smiling, even a bit laughing at one point of that. It was not a very happy story yet. It was just funny to me that I think I'm speaking probably for all projects in this space and all other spaces. We're all seeing a big influx of bug bounty reports, right? And we're all seeing probably the same pattern of initially some high quality ones and then very repetitive, like lower quality ones. This is, I think, a common problem. Now, it does look like I mean, I guess I'm just curious of your opinion overall. You know, this AI boom. Do you think it's a good or a bad thing that we're getting these reports? I'm on the fence. I think it's like great in one way because you know, our stuff is getting hardened, right? A lot of eyeballs are focused in various quality on our stuff. But on the other hand, you know, it's a lot of effort and time for the team to go through the reports, to respond to them, all of that stuff. Where do you stand on this?
I'm incredibly ambivalent on AI in general. I kind of wish we'd found how to make AI work at a point where our society was more ready for it, because I really don't think it is. And AI is being used for some awful things. It's being used for targeting of civilians in war zones like in Palestine. And yeah, I'm not even sure what to think, because okay, I had predicted in around 2000 that we wouldn't have AI that's able to pass Turing tests until at least 2050. So I was wrong by 25 years. And so I was completely unprepared for this. I think a lot of people were completely unprepared for it.
I think everybody was wrong on that. Basically, whoever was thinking about it, the Turing test, you know, like benchmark to be crossed, everybody would answer, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that it will take at least another, you know, 30, 50 years. So it's kind of crazy.
Gaming.
Harry, thoughts on this? Since your
Sorry.
original field is AI.
Sorry, someone in the room interrupted.
No problem.
No problem. Yeah. It's so actually what the other person in the room, my partner, said was that it's gaming the Turing test. I think this is actually how the Turing test was intended to work out, because if you read the paper "Computing Machinery and Intelligence" carefully, Turing never actually says that it's kind of proving that an AI that passes a Turing test, or the imitation game, as he puts it, is intelligent in the same sense as a human. What he's talking about is whether it's able to reason in similar ways, or produce output that is effectively like reasoning in similar ways. And if you actually
there's a live debate going on, I see.
Sorry, yeah. I find it very difficult to kind of think when I'm being interrupted. So if you actually use these things to work on complicated problems, like the formalization of ironwood or Zcash, then it's very uncanny, because it's clearly using reasoning that is at a similar level as an expert cryptographer, an expert human cryptographer. And I just don't know what to think about that. I don't know what these things are.
Well, I don't know about you, Harry. That definitely is a great summary of my thoughts on this whole AI boom, both broadly and also, like, more specifically when it comes to cryptography.
I think AI is useful insofar as that it can automate a lot of tasks, which are honestly very time consuming. Things like security analysis, going through proofs step by step. I haven't seen AI. I mean, maybe I'm not saying it can't happen. I haven't seen AI do anything like truly novel in terms of like system building or create new schemes quite yet. I mean, like truly novel. But I think for doing essentially test cases for going through proofs, it's surprisingly good. Even I'm shocked at, and for just generally for coding in general. And it's
I mean,
it's also very good at passing the Turing test. But I'm not convinced like the next Nym or Zcash will be invented by an AI. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I know people in the AI companies are kind of very worried by recursive self-improvement, and I am too. But as it stands, no, they're not doing fundamentally kind of creative things. I'm actually just more worried by them being misused, because the fact that they work, it's a problem. Because yeah, fascists can use them as well. Autocrats can use them. And so I think that the left sometimes underestimates the capabilities of AI, and they shouldn't be. They should be very, very worried about the fact that it actually works, adding to the dangers.
Yeah, so I mean, I would like also, I mean, to go back to like, so I do think the approach of using formal verification to help prevent these bugs is the way to go. That's direction Nym is moving. You know, we're working with, I think, some of the same people, such as Karthik Bhargavan from Crispin on formally verifying our handshake and a lot of other cool tech that Nym is doing. I do want to point out one or two interesting things. So I actually found a reference to Daira by Satoshi saying, oh, this could be interesting. I haven't been able to find the email I was looking for a few minutes ago. But again, I am skeptical of AI at the current moment having these kinds of breakthroughs. One thing that we haven't really gone into is what Nym is doing for Zcash and why Nym is useful in this transition to giving people full privacy. So if Daira agrees with this, I know like some folks like Zuko are definitely agreeing with me here that in the ideal world, if you're using your Zcash wallet, you want to maintain the privacy of your IP address and your general internet connection. And even in, I think, the original Zcash paper, they talk about mixnets, and they say, well, we want an anonymous network channel, then we do all the stuff in the blockchain with zero knowledge proofs, and that, as a whole, is what really gives us our privacy. Now, the problem is, the Ironwood upgrade, Zottle, I think, is using Tor, which is good, but we're seeing a lot of wallets not use anything. So one thing we're doing is we're trying to make Nym VPN free for all Zcash users. So if you can prove you have some shielded Zcash, or then we want you to turn on your wallet, do the thing, turn on your wallet, and then turn on Nym VPN, and then hit that Ironwood send migration button with Nym VPN on, so everything going from one shielded pool to the next shielded pool, the formally verified shielded pool. If you have any thoughts on that and future possible integrations or work between Nym and Zcash to give Zcash that full network level privacy.
I'm very keen on that. Essentially, Zcash essentially does bundle a kind of anonymous communication system. It's a kind of system that isn't used very much because it doesn't scale. So you just have everyone write ciphertexts on a blackboard, which in this case is the blockchain, and they use a key hiding encryption scheme, key private encryption scheme, and that means that and everyone tries to decrypt every ciphertext on the blackboard with their own key, and that clearly doesn't scale. But it's what we use because it was simple to implement, and it was what was in the Zcash paper. But we really need to replace that layer with something that does scale. For example, Nym. I actually again, partly because of my experience working on mixnets in the past, I think that mixnets do a better job of that. They have a fundamentally stronger adversary model than have onion routing, such as you get in Tor.
Yeah, and just to go back to some of your previous work on mixnets, I actually discovered I was looking for the email that had a big impact on Lynn and I think other folks, and I know you worked on Mixed Menu with George Denises, and I finally saw this paper I read a long time ago, which had a huge impact on Nym, which you probably forgot about, by you and Roger Dingeldine from Tor, and Michael Friedman and David Molnar, called A Reputation System to Increase Mixnet Reliability. I'm actually looking for an open version of the paper.
I definitely do not forget this paper. You never really forget a paper that you've written, but or co-authored. But I spent a lot of time on this paper because some of the timing things, kind of how to not assume completely synchronized clocks and how to attribute things correctly in the face of asynchronous network delays that, well, it's in a partially synchronous model. They were very tricky. So I definitely remember this paper. I'm quite proud of having worked on this paper.
Well, let's share this historic paper for those who are interested.
I already have. I
also I found a free version online from, of course, Rogers Freehaven, and I would say that this paper has a big impact on us exactly for the things you mentioned. That it said, okay, we're going. A lot of mixnets assumed we're all sending messages at the same time. We have some sort of weird master clock. And then the question is it decentralized or not? The original Chaumian mixnets were typically not decentralized. So if someone drops a message, you have different mixed nodes. Who gets that blame? I mean, we're still working on that problem. We have a different algorithm, but it's essentially, I think your algorithms inspired us and really showed off the two fundamental problems that we felt mixnets needed to conquer to be deployed in the real world, which is dealing with asynchronous sending of messages. The internet's really big. People have different clocks. People are doing different things at different times. You can't control what they're doing. And then what do you do with bad nodes? When our nodes, you even just have performance failures or other Byzantine kind of failures. Maybe you're dropping messages, maybe you're maliciously holding them. And you said, well, hey, why don't we just build a reputation system? And so that's one of and
well, me and my co-authors.
You and your co-founders, yeah, they're co-authors. And then I said, well, look, that's a great answer. So when I mean, for Nym, when we built the first version of Nym, without a reputation system. There was no token in the first version. And then we get, people say, oh, why do you add a token? Why do you really need a token? I'm like, look, everyone, the concept of attaching a reputation system to mixnets is very old. I don't know if yours is the first paper. I think there's some even older work by them.
There was definitely prior work.
I think Feitzman had some prior work. The kind of
we
German,
probably reference it.
I think it is. Yeah, some of the Germans working on, I think, were definitely early days of the reputation system. I think yours was the most mature we found, actually, which means the research, this area of work actually kind of stopped when Roger started working on Tor, and you get sucked into Zcash and everything.
Well, I got sucked into Tahoe LFS first.
Oh, sorry, Tahoe LFS and then Zcash from Tahoe, which are both amazing projects that we've been following for a very long time. But we kind of want to return to this work. So sometimes when people criticize them and say, "Why do you have a token?" we say, "Look, the concept of having a token or some sort of reputation system to make a mixnet scale to the real world actually predates Bitcoin itself. It's one of the oldest problems that the cypherpunks, of which you're one and everyone, Roger and Zuko, have been working on since the origin of how do we really make anonymous communication work in the real world. Because it's very easy to say, okay, I'm just going to pretend everyone sends messages all at once and everything's perfectly reliable, but that doesn't work in the real world. So I did want to point people out to that work. So I really viewed the future of Zcash and Nym as coming together. One of the problems that you have with reputation systems with every anonymous system is how to run, how to run, how to get paid for running the nodes. Servers are not free. If you run a good node, you should somehow get a better reputation and maybe even more money to run even a bigger node, even bigger servers. And I actually, I have Tor's been doing work on this for many years. I looked at a lot of those papers. Brian Ford's work is very interesting in that regard. And I remember in 2017 saying, "Hey, Roger, I was at a Tor meeting. You should add that you really do this reputation system on top of Tor. It's time to revisit this. It's kind of going to be now or never." And it's absolutely amazing that we now have, because of Zcash at the time, which also had my attention. We actually can do pay, because the other argument against Bitcoin is you can't do payments anonymously. So I said, well, look, we can do payments anonymously with Zcash. And then now this is the perfect setup for Tor having a reputation system. Now, Roger was not interested in that. And he had a very good argument, which he gave to me in person. He said, Tor is effectively, by virtue of being a nonprofit, is a system based on altruism. And we don't want to assume adversarial bad behavior by the nodes to a large extent. If we do that, if we add a reputation system, it will change the dynamics of our existing node operators. And that's, not relay operators for Tor. And that's not what we want to do.
Wasn't Tor basically attacked by a pseudo-spoofing adversary who that's how Silk Road got taken down?
To some extent, yeah. We actually interviewed Blake from Silk Road 2, and we went into the details of all the Silk Road takedowns. So but I think it's when Roger said that, I said, well, cool. Well, we're also working on mixnets, so why don't we just go all the way back to the beginning of cypherpunk history, revisit it all, and say, okay, cool.
Yes, we should.
We have mixnets. We've been working this stuff for 20, 30 years, and the tech actually works and can scale now, which is not the case pre-Bitcoin with a lot of digital cash.
In this context, we have to talk about Mojo Nation. So,
that was Roger's other objection to reputation systems, which is
Mojo Nation was this kind of amazing kind of showcase of cypherpunk ideas. Really is how I think of it. And you can trace the influences to BitTorrent and to Tile NAFS and to Blue Sky and a bunch of other things. And it kind of had this, it had a token system or monetary system internally to kind of incentivize operators, and it was way too ambitious for the time. And this is presumably it was Roger's argument that it will be too complicated for Tor. But I mean, given that we have Zcash now, and we have kind of some convergence in the interests of Zcash and Nym, in the sense that kind of Nym needs a token that is independently useful. Not just in your existing token, but and Zcash needs to scale its anonymity layer. I think that's a kind of a very good.
I think it's a total convergence. So I mean, if I remember correctly, I think Zuko worked on Mojo Nation, and I've heard the same arguments when Bitcoin took off from the older cypherpunks. Well, we know this isn't going to work because Mojo Nation didn't work, and if I remember correctly with Mojo Nation,
they should stop making that argument.
Well, the classic argument was that you could kind of, because users would get some like free token when they logged on, so you can kind of do like an infinite supply bug, right? So sometimes, if I remember, I mean, there was other issues, but I think that was one issue.
There were plenty of issues.
Okay, well, that was one. And I was like, well, look, guys, I mean, people complain. I mean, Bitcoin has many privacy problems that Zcash fixes, and other folks like Monero and everyone's worked on. The one thing that Bitcoin, to its credit, did is it said, look, we're just going to cap the supply and not make it possible to just kind of mint tokens via a system bug. what was viewed as a way to get people to use the system, to give them some free mojo, if I remember correctly, if they logged on. It had like a mojo token sort of thing. And so I think people, we've learned a lot. I mean, your work, we didn't imagine, no one thought that you'd have zero knowledge proofs in production. We now have zero knowledge proofs in production. No one thought you could have a formally verified pool that prevents inflation bugs. We now have a formally verified pool that prevents inflation bugs. And we now have a mixnet that does cover traffic and serves.
It's a few PRs.
Yeah, it's a few PRs, but we have all this stuff that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago. And I think, the mistake maybe of some projects, I mean, maybe even Mojo, is you don't want to think of one giant system that solves all of humanity's problems. This is maybe a incorrect use of engineering, of overcorrection by engineers, that we can create the perfect system that will give us human freedom once we build the system, and the system's never built. And you see this repeated a lot, particularly in blockchain projects. And I think it's better to think of it, we can, ideally with the help of AI now, but also our wonderfully talented community, we can build systems where each different part of what people need. People need anonymous network communication. They need network privacy. They also need private digital anonymous cash. We can build all of these systems, and the systems can then work together kind of effectively in coalition as a part of a larger holistic system, which would produce something which we haven't really got working yet, but I think we're quite close to, which is a privacy enhanced stack that lets people do things what they want to do on the internet without worry about surveillance or censorship, including exchanging money, making contracts, doing posts, accessing information. And all of these concepts have been around since the days of Freehaven, the Eternity Service. Ross Anderson did a security analysis of Nym before he died. I think I will reveal that security analysis when we tackle some of the issues. And now I think it's the right time. So yeah, we should go to Q&A though. We can talk about.
Beautiful ending remarks, Harry, for our chat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Sorry, Daira, do you wanna add something?
Oh, just briefly, it's a very decentralized way of doing things. Just let individual successful projects kind of do the thing that they're best at, and then combine those into a coherent system.
I would love to continue this chat. I also wanted to ask you about Zodl and a bunch of other things, but we don't have time for that, unfortunately. We gotta jump into the community questions. So maybe we'll have you back, and then we can discuss all of that other stuff as well. Awesome. All right. Thank you for the many great questions that we got from the audience as well. Thank you for sticking with us. Hopefully you enjoyed the links that we shared in the chat and also the conversation thus far. Our first question is from Visible Dust. Question is, have Harry and Emma collaborated on a project before?
No.
No. But never say never, right?
I was in Team Europe, and I think you're in for very many years.
UK.
In the UK, yeah. So we shared collaborators like George Denisis. I think you collaborated with George a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, and George has been a huge impact on mixnets for many years. But we never actually directly collaborated before, so it'll be fun. I have hung out on the IRC channels of Tahoe and stuff back in the day.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember we looked at deploying Tahoe once. I remember I said, "Well, Zuko, you need X, Y, and Z," and Zuko's like, "You're looking for a unicorn." So I've been tracking all of the work for many years.
So maybe soon TM is the answer. Thank you for the question, Visible Dust. Next one is from our beloved community contributor, Rocio. The question is, how do we ensure that privacy tech like zero knowledge proofs and mixnets remain accessible to marginalized activists rather than becoming tools for tech elites? I think this is a great question. Daira, what are your thoughts?
It is a great question. I had a presentation about exactly this question at the Cypherpunk Summit in Argentina, I think, Buenos Aires. Yeah, there were technical problems with that presentation, but never mind. Yeah, I mean, in my kind of personal life, I do a lot of trans and disabled activism, and I agree that the tools we have at the moment are not serving the needs of activists well. So the example I use in my presentation is we've basically solved an idealized version of the kind of the private communication channel ignoring metadata leakage, so things like Signal. But we haven't really solved it for activists because when they use Signal on their phones, they're not just using Signal. They may need to use translation apps. They may need to cut and paste things to other applications, and the clipboard APIs on mobile phones are terrible. Kind of they may need to use text to speech, speech to text. All of these things, the translation in particular, is just all going to the cloud. And you've no idea what's happening with that. No one has audited that connection to check that it's using a secure channel. That's even if you do trust the provider, which you probably shouldn't if you're doing some sensitive communication. And so we're not really serving the needs of a lot of people who need this communication, especially kind of racialized people and people who are genuinely under attack from governments. We're not really meeting that threat model.
Maybe if you have a link to the aforementioned talk that you gave about this, if this was recorded, if you can send it to me, I can then share it with the community. I think this would be very interesting to Rocio. Thank you for a great question, Rocio, and thank you for that answer. Now, Rocio, I see that.
Sorry, well, that was quite a pessimistic view. So how do we fix it, Harry?
Actually, good.
Well, I was going to add that. I mean, one thing we have to do is we have to make the apps and the technologies both accessible in all ways, open source, usable by people who have various kinds of capacities or abilities, usable in different languages. And, we have to eventually make everything free and open, and free, both free as in freedom and free to use. Now, right now, Nym VPN, you do pay for it, and we're just trying to get to the point where we can sustain development work. Somewhat similar to the Zcash Founders Fund or whatever Zodal's business model is now. At the same point, we do need to make these tools at some point absolutely free for those who need them. So, we're going to be working on that over the next few months, trying to figure out how we can, move. We already have kind of free passes. We have free versions of Nym that we give to activist groups. If you're a Nym community, you can always ask us for free passes to give out if you know people that really need it. If you're meeting with at-risk individuals, you're doing a workshop on digital security, and eventually we'll make more and more versions free, including the SDK, so people can build apps for their community on top of it. I don't think it's a perfect answer, but we are actively thinking about how to make this happen.
We need to do better than commercial apps. We need to make things that are more usable than commercial apps, that do everything that they do and more. If it turns out that you need to integrate machine translation to get the security properties you want, then we need to do that. And similarly for accessibility features. Okay, I know it's a lot of stuff. We have AI now, so we can go faster. AI doesn't replace human review or judgment, and we can't go too fast because we'll end up with bugs like the ones that we've been dealing with in Zcash. But it is feasible to do all of this, and it's feasible to make privacy-preserving systems that protect people's freedom in all kinds of ways, in all of the ways that they need. Financial privacy, communication privacy, bodily autonomy. It's feasible to do all of this and to beat the commercial kind of surveillance capitalism companies, so that to beat them on usability and make sure that people are able to use our stuff instead of that.
Amen. I really honestly hope that you're right. And I feel like this space has made a lot of progress towards that over the past 5 years or so. The tools are becoming way less obscure than they used to be. They are becoming way more usable than they used to be. I think we're ready for prime time, and it's very nice to see. And I hope that you're gonna be right about this. Now, unfortunately, Harry has a hard stop at 15, and we're already over time, so we only have time left for one quick question, and I'm gonna make it a bit of a like a switch in topics because I'm also curious. This is from Ginny. What is the picture behind you? Yeah, in your background. What is that? Tell us about it. Very nice. You're muted if you're talking.
It says "I'm shy" at the top.
Nice.
Kind of this abstract thing. I actually won it in a raffle, I believe. It was a trans activism fundraiser, and yeah, I love it. It speaks to me. The painter's name is Claire, and unfortunately, I didn't keep track of the full name, but yeah, I really love it.
It's a pretty cool raffle prize, I have to say. Go ahead, Harry.
We could do maybe one more question if there's time. I mean, I can do another one.
Okay. Then wait, let me pick a good
I don't
one.
need to. I'm not tracking the questions myself.
All right. Let's pick one from someone I haven't seen before in these calls. So welcome to the community and to the Nym community call Sanebox. How much time does optimization end up consuming with the current state of development of mixnets? I think this one is for you, Harry, but probably also for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's the main goal. And so, we haven't done a bit of work on it recently. Based on what Daira said, we're trying to make mixnets more usable. So if you're using Nym VPN, you've noticed that when we first launched, there was no user interface, and there was kind of a really kind of quick one. And we just imagined that people just use the API and the SDKs. If you want to see the latest work on the SDKs for Zcash, we've been working a lot on making the SDKs usable by even developers. But we didn't really we worked a lot on optimizing the cryptography, and then we basically stopped and really switched in a goal to make a usable product. And now I think the product's pretty usable. Could be a little better. There's some places and a bit more reliable and a bit more stable. But now we're going to really move back to optimizing the performance. So this includes reliability. So we're going to switch. I'll just give you a quick preview. We're going to switch Nym to be using kind of better reliability UDP channels. We're going to basically use this thing from gamers called KCP, which should help us basically not lose your packets as much, which will make everything better, more reliable. And then we're optimizing. We have had someone. We've had folks, Daniel Bernstein actually delivered hand optimized code for X25519. We're looking to do similar stuff for other post quantum schemes. So this will, I think, give us a bit of a speed bump on the nodes. If the nodes can run the optimized codes about twice as fast. And then there's also architectural changes. There's been a lot of research done by Claudia Diaz and one of our students called Mehdi Rahimi, which is looking at how much anonymity do you really lose right now with Nym. You always kind of choose you kind of choose the path randomly through the mixnet. So you can choose your entry and exit, but the path is kind of random. And that's a very nice paper, and you get like kind of good theoretical results. But the question is, how much real world anonymity do you lose if you just choose a few random nodes that are kind of closer to you? And that can really speed up the mixnet even faster than just optimizing the cryptography. The answer is you don't lose very much. You lose a little bit, but a lot less than people thought.
Well, it depends what country you're in, right?
You always have to go outside your country, right?
Yeah.
But even against, we're measuring against a global passive adversary, the whole network. And even against the global passive adversary, is if enough people in different countries, you can optimize the path selection algorithm a bit. Now, whether that's a good thing to do or not is something that requires reading a whole PhD thesis. And Maddie and Claudia have been working on this for 4-5 years, I think. But we're getting pretty solid results. And then when we get these kind of solid results, we then let people then choose. As long as we know it's not hurting the collective, we let individuals choose if they want to use optimized paths, and that should speed up the mixnet. Crypto speed up is also big deal. One other, I mean, just in a sheer cryptographic sense, I think we can get some speed ups on the packet size and the cryptography, what we call wide block ciphers. We're actually using one of Ross Anderson's old wide block ciphers, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, it's referenced in the Zcash.
Yeah, we're still using Lioness. Lioness. We should probably we have thoughts about how to upgrade that and make it faster, both more secure and faster, because cryptography has advanced a lot since the early 2000s when that cipher was invented. But it's still we haven't put that in production yet. So there's tons of work to do. But I just will tell people the mixnet should be speeding up. It may take, and the first step of that was giving you, the user, selection over your timing delays. So, because we did enough academic work done by Ines Ben-Gurat and Claudia proving, and Debo Das proving that if you change your timing delays, you won't make anyone worse. Like, you don't affect others. Like, everyone still has the anomaly they got through their timing delays, and maybe you don't help them as much, but you're not making them worse. Like, well, that's
that's not obvious. That's worth proving. Yeah,
totally not obvious. I'll share that. I'll share that paper as well.
We're doing a lot of optimization work in Zcash as well as Tachyon, which is the next generation that's kind of basically completely focused on scalability. And there's another. So the Zodl wallet is going to use a sync algorithm called Slipstream. And yeah, there's a lot of potential for performance improvements. And we need to have those performance improvements to make it usable to a wide range of people.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. Folks, with all of that said, we really do have to wrap up now. This was a fabulous call. Big thanks for joining us, Daira. I hope you can come back. Actually, the community is already asking for a round 2 of this conversation. So hopefully we can have you back fairly soon for another round. Go ahead, Harry. You're about to say something.
We are planning a round 2. And the round 2 is that we are working to integrate against Zcash wallets. And Zodl is, of course, interested, and we are trying to work very hard so that Zcash wallet developers can easily plug Nym in, and that's mostly been carried by Max Hampshire. Max couldn't make it today because he's traveling, but we will have, I think, hopefully another session where we can celebrate the convergence of Zcash and Nym finally being pulled off. And I think hopefully we can do this within months rather than years, thanks to the hard work of both AI and individuals like Daira. And if you're interested in like a sneak preview, you can share that link about how Zcash and Nym can work together, the threat models. There's just tons of info about that. And if you are a wallet dev, you can literally use that information to speed up your integration.
Listen, this has been a long time coming. Max has been at work for a long time now on this project. I think he was on a community call about half a year ago or something, where he gave an update at the time about the project. So make sure to check that out as well. I left links to everything that we discussed to both of my guests. Big thanks for coming on. This was a lovely conversation. There's only one thing I have left to do, which is, of course, the little tradition that we have here in the Nym community. We give a little NFT to all of the people who hang out with us and ask us questions and join us for these community calls live. So you all know what to do already. You need to go to, wait a second. How do I get us out of the way here? Let me find a different view. Sorry, ladies and gents. Yeah, there it is. So go to nym.com/go/poap and enter the secret phrase NU, capital N, capital U, 6.3. Now, Daira, can I ask you why we chose this secret phrase?
That's our latest upgrade, which is activated now. Yes, we've finally got rid of the Zcash node, so we're completely on Zebra now. The code base is based on Zebra. So that's a Rust node, which is memory safe and much nicer, and kind of not bogged down by Bitcoin Core legacy. So it's quite a relief to be switched over to that.
Awesome. Now on that note, I will wrap up here. It was lovely to have this chat with both of you, and I hope to have both of you back for that aforementioned episode 2. Looking forward to it. Thanks for our audience for joining us. See you back for one of these calls. Same time, same channel. Actually, not same time. We did it 1 hour later this week, but we'll be back to the usual scheduling. So 2 p.m. UTC, Thursday next week. See you all. Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.